Have you ever gone back to San Andreas, seen the game at night and thought, isn't the atmosphere a little bit dead? At night, there's a distinct lack of lights in the distance. Or during the day, you can't even see the Los Santos skyline from the Santa Maria beach. It all just feels very small. However, thanks to the still active San Andreas modding community, this can easily be fixed. Welcome to the first episode of the Mod Showroom, and today we're taking a look at Project 2DFX. So, what is it? Project 2DFX started as a mod to increase the draw distance of lights in the 3D era games, after I seen how Rockstar did the same thing in GTA V. As of today, the mod can allow you to see every light in the game from any distance, and also has a wide range of options for increasing the draw distance of all objects on the map. The mod also adds new lights to the map, such as lights to bridges, and lights on the Sherman Dam. So, before I give a quick technical explanation, just 3 keywords I want to cover. LOD. This means level of detail and usually refers to the lower quality objects you see in the distance. They get swapped out with higher quality models when you get closer to them. Corona. This is just another word for the lights you see in GTA games. The texture is called a corona. Vanilla. This means the game in its original state without mods having any effect. An example of how the mod works: in the vanilla game, objects such as lampposts have coronas attached to their model file. We'll just say the lamppost has a draw distance value of 30 meters, but the corona attached to it has a separate draw distance value of 15 meters. If the player moves 16 meters away from the lamppost, the corona will despawn, and if the player moves 31 meters away, the lamppost will despawn. With Project 2DFX, however, the draw distance of coronas is tied with the model draw distance. Plus, when the model the corona is attached to despawns at 31 meters, an LOD corona will take the original corona's place, which can be seen from any distance. That's the main focus of the mod. Again, the mod also allows you to increase the draw distance of all objects on the map, but I'll cover more of that when we look over the mod's config file. For now, let's just install the mod. If you followed my beginner's guide to modding San Andreas, you'll already have this mod installed. If that's the case, you can skip to the next chapter. If you haven't followed my beginner's guide and have never installed mods before, I'd recommend going back and watching that guide before continuing. Once you've done that, you can skip to the next chapter of this video. And last, if you know how to install mods and didn't need my guide, this should be an easy install. It's an ASI mod, so all it requires is an ASI loader. The mod also requires Open Limit Adjuster, but it comes with that already. If you already have Open Limit Adjuster installed, don't install the 2 Limit Adjuster files included with the mod. So first up, download the mod from the link in the description. Once the download is complete, go to your downloads folder and open the .zip. As you can see here, we have 3 files called SA-LOD lights, .asi, .dat and .ini. We also have 2 Limit Adjuster files, and that's Open Limit Adjuster. So first up, we'll install Project 2DFX. I'm going to install this through Mod Loader, and if you haven't got Mod Loader installed, I'm just going to assume you don't know what you're doing. So first, before you continue, please go back and watch the beginner's guide that I also uploaded, as that will make sure you have Mod Loader installed. So easy enough, open Mod Loader, create a new folder, we call this Project 2DFX, open the folder, and then drag and drop the 3 files that you just downloaded. So that's Project 2DFX installed. Now you can also install the Limit Adjuster files here too, but for a bit of neatness, we're going to go back out, create a new folder, open Limit Adjuster, open that, and then we copy and paste the Limit Adjuster files straight to that folder. And that's it, Project 2DFX installed, so let's move on. Project 2DFX also comes with an extremely customizable configuration file with a ton of options. So I'm going to go over all of them and explain what each option does, and I'll also tell you my recommended settings for the best gameplay. The mod also comes with a data file for the LOD Coronas. It's already documented and it's not necessary to change anything in that file unless you're making your own mod, so we're not going to cover that in this video. Before we start, if you want to disable any of these settings, just put 2 forward slashes at the start of the setting that you want disabled. LOD lights. These are the settings for the LOD Coronas that I mentioned earlier. These only appear at a distance. Render LOD lights. This enables or disables the LOD Coronas, but in my testing this crashes the game when disabled. I'd recommend leaving this at 1 regardless. Max number of LOD lights. This limits the number of LOD Coronas that can be on the screen. I'd recommend leaving this at the default setting. However, if you want to disable the LOD Coronas for some reason, set this to 0. Corona Radius Multiplier. This increases or decreases the size of LOD Coronas using multiplier. So, if the Corona size inside SA LOD lights.dat is 2.0, setting this to 3.0 will make the Corona size 6.0, which is way too big, but that's just an example. By default, this setting is at 0.75, which is a little too big for my taste, so I'd recommend 0.30 for this setting. Slightly increase radius with distance. This increases the size of the Coronas the further you are away from them. I'd recommend leaving this on. Corona Far Clip. This is the draw distance of LOD lights. There's no reason to change this really. The default option automatically adjusts the draw distance, so you'll always see the LOD Coronas. I'd recommend leaving this the way it is. Custom Corona Texture Path. This allows you to use a different texture other than the Corona Star texture inside particle.txt for the LOD Coronas. This won't change the texture of non-LOD Coronas that are attached to models. That still has to be changed in particle.txt. By default, you can just drop an image called Corona with the PNG file format into your Project 2D-FX folder and it'll work. But you can also use a custom path. Unless you know what you're doing, you probably don't need this, so just leave it as it is. Static Shadows. These are options for the static shadows that appear under lights. They're also called Corona shadows. These are simply a white semi-transparent texture that apply to models underneath Coronas. Render static shadows for LODs. Enabling this will render these shadows for the LOD Coronas. This is very performance heavy and very glitchy. There is a limit on Corona shadows, but it's cracked in Open Limit Adjuster. However, by default, the limit is set to 2048 because setting it any higher and enabling this setting will cause performance to be completely awful. The visual benefits you get from this, plus how buggy the shadows are at a distance, don't make turning this option on worthwhile, so I'd recommend leaving this disabled. Static Shadow Intensity. This changes the intensity of the Corona shadows. In the vanilla game, the intensity depends on the settings used for the Corona attached to the model. However, this value makes all Coronas have the same intensity and by default is a higher intensity across the board compared to the vanilla game. I'd recommend leaving this at 2.0, but it's completely up to you. Static Shadows Draw Distance. This changes the draw distance for the Corona shadows for non-LOD Coronas. In the vanilla game, these are very low, and you'll see them fade in as you get close. By default, the value is 200, which increases the distance without sacrificing too much performance. You can increase this value more, but you'll get some bad flickering issues, so I'd recommend leaving it at 200. Searchlights. This adds a searchlight effect underneath Coronas, and by default it only appears during foggy weather. As you get closer to the searchlight, it'll get more transparent and eventually despawn. They're called searchlights because it's using the searchlight from the police helicopters in San Andreas and applying them to Coronas. Render Searchlight Effects. This enables or disables the searchlight effect on Coronas during foggy weather. I'd recommend disabling this effect. The way the searchlight disappears as you get closer is too obvious and it looks like they're just popping in and out. We'll cover the rest of the options though for those who want to keep this effect on. Render only during foggy weather. Allows you to make the searchlight effect appear on coronas even if it's not foggy. I'd recommend leaving this on as there's no reason light would appear like this outside of foggy weather. Searchlight effect visibility factor. This allows you to change the opacity of the searchlights, higher making them more visible and lower making them less visible. I'd recommend leaving this at 0.4. Smooth effect. This makes the gradient in the spotlight smoother. I'd recommend leaving this on as it looks better. Draw distance changer. This overwrites the draw distance, also known as the far clip value in the weather settings, to make it one consistent value, whereas in the original game it changes depending on the settings for that specific weather. It also makes the far clip increase the higher you are from the ground. Think of the far clip as the fog that covers objects in the distance. Anything beyond that fog isn't rendered. Draw distance values in San Andreas are done in meters. The map from one side to the other is 6 kilometers. So to see the entire map from one side, you need to set the far clip to 6,000 meters. Keep in mind, every object on the map has its own draw distance value independent of the far clip. So for example, if you set the far clip to 6,000 meters, but all the objects on the map only had a draw distance of 1,000 meters, every object outside of your 1,000 meter radius wouldn't appear. This is hard to show because San Andreas increases the LOD draw distance the higher you are, so I've used this diagram instead. The same works the other way. If all the objects on the map had a draw distance of 6,000, but the far clip was only 1,000 meters, you wouldn't see any objects beyond the far clip or fog. Enable. This enables or disables the draw distance changer. By default, the far clip close to the ground is similar to the vanilla game. In the air, however, your far clip will increase with this enabled. I'd recommend leaving this on unless you're using a weather mod. Min draw distance on the ground. This is the minimum far clip value the game will use while you're on the ground. As you get higher, however, the draw distance will increase from this value. I'd recommend setting this to 2000 so you can see the Los Santos skyline from the ground. If for whatever reason you wanted to see the entire map from the ground, set this to 6000. Factor 1 and Factor 2. These are just two variables used in the formula to calculate the draw distance. There's no reason for you to mess with these really, so I'd recommend leaving them untouched. Static sun size. In the vanilla game, the sun size is normally variable depending on the weather setting. This option overwrites the weather settings and makes it one constant size. Higher the value, the bigger the sun. Keep in mind, the sun gets smaller the higher your far clip, as you can see here. This option is enabled even if the draw distance changer is disabled. If you're using a weather mod, I'd recommend disabling this. If not, I have mine set to 50 as I think the sun is too small with the default setting. It's completely up to you though. Adaptive draw distance. This allows the far clip to change depending on your frame rate. San Andreas has issues at frame rates above 30, so you should be locking your game to that anyway. But if you do unlock your frame rate and have performance drops with a high far clip, you can use this setting. There's not really much to recommend with this setting as it's completely dependent on your own hardware and scenario, so I'll just cover how this setting works. Enable. This enables or disables adaptive draw distance. This won't work if you have draw distance changer disabled. Min and max FPS value. These are the frame rates in which the game will start to change the far clip. So, if you drop below the minimum FPS value, the far clip decreases. If you go above the max FPS value, the far clip increases. If your frame rate is in between the minimum and max frame rate, your far clip won't change. Max possible draw distance. This is the max possible far clip adaptive draw distance will increase to when above your maximum frame rate value. If you are using this feature, I'd recommend lowering this to around 2000 instead. IDE Tweaker. IDE Tweaker overwrites the draw distance values for certain groups of objects, which would usually have their draw distance be defined in item definition files, also known as IDE files. In this section, Any values under 10 will be used as a multiplier rather than a distance value. So for example, if the draw distance of a building is 15 meters as defined in the item definition file, if you set the value here to 10 meters, the draw distance of that object will now be 150 meters. If you set the value here to be 11 meters, well then the draw distance of the building would only be 11 meters. Timed objects draw distance. This is the draw distance of timed objects, such as windows on buildings. These are actually separate models that spawn at a chosen time and despawn at another chosen time. I'd recommend setting this to 6000 so you can see these models from any distance. Neon's draw distance. This option doesn't actually work and is only for Vice City. Any neon in San Andreas get their draw distance increased using timed objects draw distance instead, so I'd recommend disabling this. LOD objects draw distance. This overwrites the draw distance value of LOD models. In the vanilla game, the draw distance for level of detail models is obviously pretty high, as they're meant to be seen at a distance. However, if you increase the far clip, some of these LOD models aren't intended to be seen from that far, which means the draw distance is too low and you'll see holes in the map. Generic items that are repeated through the map like most trees or lampposts don't have LOD models. I'd recommend setting this value to 6000 meters, as there's no downside and it ensures LODs are visible regardless of distance. Generic objects draw distance. This overrides the draw distance value for objects which are listed in the generic folder, which contains the IDE files for generic items such as trees, lampposts, and bins. There is one issue though. Objects on the map such as buildings and roads have their locations stored in an item placement file, mainly known as IPL files. These load when the game starts, and the game just streams the objects in and out depending on things like far clip and draw distance. For generic items, this is different. Instead, their location is stored in a binary IPL file located in the GTA3.img archive. And unlike normal IPL files, these only load depending on the player position. So, while you can set the generic value to 6000 meters, you won't be able to see the generic objects like trees or lampposts all over the map, because the binary IPL files aren't loaded for the entire map. Still, you can use this option to increase the draw distance of generic items massively compared to the vanilla game. There's also a way to load all of the binary IPL files, which we'll cover after the next two options. I'm not going to recommend anything yet, as there's another setting which also has an effect on generic objects. While the next option is all normal objects draw distance, we're going to skip that for now and move on to vegetation draw distance, as that's also related to the generic object draw distance setting. Vegetation draw distance. So, this option is meant to only change the draw distance of vegetation such as trees and bushes, separate from the generic object's draw distance value. However, in my tests, I noticed it seems to be related to the generic object's draw distance value too, almost like a small multiplier. For example, here I have vegetation draw distance disabled and I have the generic object's draw distance value set to 300. As you can see, lampposts and trees don't draw that far, and they only appear within the 300 meter radius as they should. But when I enable vegetation draw distance and set it to 800, trees appear at a distance, but so do lampposts, even though these aren't meant to be included with the vegetation draw distance. So, after some testing, I found it's best to set generic objects draw distance to 200 and leave vegetation draw distance at 800. This seems to offer the best draw distance for trees with the binary IPL limitation, while also increasing the draw distance of other generic objects but not overdoing it. All normal objects draw distance. This is the draw distance for all objects other than LODs. So basically, any high detail models like buildings, roads, trees, lampposts, etc. Keep in mind, generic objects draw distance and vegetation draw distance overwrites this value for those specific object groups. So with my recommended settings, this shouldn't have an effect on trees or generic items. I'd recommend setting this to 200. Anything above 200 can cause memory issues and can be a real performance hit. Load all binary IPLs. Okay, so remember I mentioned binary IPLs earlier? This option is meant to load all of those binary IPL files I talked about, regardless of where the player is. However, this option doesn't actually work in Project 2D-FX, so you can just disable it. That being said, I did make a small Clio script years ago that loads all of the binary IPL files regardless of player location, which would allow us to see the entire map with generic objects or trees. Unfortunately, this eventually causes problems with the game, like random objects becoming attached to NPCs, and eventually the game will crash. So while it's good for screenshots, using this script isn't very good for gameplay. I'll leave a link to the script down below, but I wouldn't recommend using it. This is just for those who are curious. Preload LODs. This option preloads the LOD models, so the game doesn't only begin to load them when the player spawns on the map. There's no reason to disable this really, it just makes loading the LODs faster, so I'd recommend leaving this on. Festive lights. This just makes the coronas around the map change colours on New Year's Eve. It's a cool Easter egg, but if you're playing on New Year's Eve and don't want this, disable this setting. And that's all the settings covered in the configuration file. Again, my recommended values are what I think is best for playing through the game. However, I also have a configuration which I use for screenshots, which I'll link below. It's very performance heavy and not very stable, so I wouldn't recommend using it if you're trying to play through San Andreas. I'll also link a configuration file down below designed for lower end PCs too, disabling all of the draw distance effects and just leaving the LOD coronas. So that takes us to the end of the video. Again, if you're new to modding and haven't watched my beginner's guide, I'd recommend watching it to get you started. If you have any questions related to anything in this video or my other videos, leave a comment and I'll try my best to answer. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this.